We'll talk a little bit about past, present, and future, and why, as humanity and living beings, we exist, and that's to learn and to grow. Just like any other animal, living creature on Earth or the universe learns, lives, and grows. Why do we go to school? Why do we, you know, get a job and have get the experience as well as take the tests and the learning from an apprentice to learn and to grow. That's the whole point. When you learn, you grow, you experience a new skill. It's some natural about being a human being, not just downloading an archive or start practicing something different. It's less about just downloading a practice and more about learning and growing and adapting. That's while we exist, how we change and truly transform and become something that's permanent. If we choose to neglect the past, the future will repeat itself through the experience in the past that we choose to neglect and learn from. So the lesson when it comes to learning is, if we want to change the future, whether it be at an individual level or mass level, as a civilization or as a people throughout the world and the government and nations, we must first learn the past from those who walked it, learn from that, apply it to ourselves, learn what needs to be fixed, make the necessary sacrifices so that the future can be changed. If not, we will repeat the same situations over and over again. But the problem in all of that is that those, not those who are in power, but ourselves as well, and those who have the power in the world, that is, whether it be money, whether it be the ownership of businesses and everything, we don't make sometimes the necessary sacrifices. We expect someone to come and save us. We think the government just gonna come and give us what we need and what we want, and we don't want to learn from it. And that's kind of the issue. We just expect someone to come down from heaven sometimes and to bail us out. Like Christ. Christ came not as a banker. Where does it say in the Bible that Christ came as a banker? Nowhere. Just in una video. Sorry, it's my mom. He came not as a banker, but he came as a teacher. And like teachers, they come to teach you a lesson or to teach you something so that you can learn and grow, so that way you may change your future. Hence, he forgave on the fact that if you learned not to do something, that you would change and transform and become new, or I should say, changed, transformed. Science, we call it evolution. In this case, we call it becoming a new creature. You're someone else. You become the part of yourself that doesn't make the same mistake. Like animals who learn, survive. And yes, you can download as much archives as you want on planet Earth, and God forbid we use artificial intelligence for everything. And that has its applications for civilization and for everything in life. But if you're not the one making the decision, the only one that's learning is the artificial intelligence, not you. You're not changing, it is changing, but you are not. You stay stagnant, it is learning for you. You're not doing the work, you're not making decisions, you're not making the necessary sacrifices. So it goes, and then you're left with the consequences of what it did that you allowed it to do. So the answer to is if you really want to change, you must make the necessary decisions and sacrifices in order for life to change, for you to change. The nation isn't just the people in the White House or in Washington, D.C. The Constitution makes it very clear. It says, we the people, and the government from we the people was something example made for the rest of the nations, I mean the United Nations. So we choose to neglect the part of ourselves that chooses to make the necessary learning to change. There's a whole library in Washington, D.C. It's called the Library of Congress. If we neglect the books that have been set before us so we can learn from, then nothing will ever change. And then when bad things happen, the only thing we desire is a repetitive cycle of hurting ourselves. No different. All we're doing is just setting a super intelligent quantum intelligence to do everything for us. And even though that's necessary from an industrial civilization and societal standpoint, when we fall, whose fault is that gonna be? We can't keep blaming Christ for everything if he don't come and bail us out. Again, he's not a banker in that sense of, yes, he comes gives us what we need, and he helps us forgive of our sins, in the process of forgiving our sins. But he doesn't come as a bank; he comes as a teacher. It's like a credit card company who has a credit forgiveness program. If you don't learn from the program of the credit forgiveness, they're not going to forgive your credit if you keep making the same mistakes. You can't lend your credit card to somebody who's going to spend it. You can't go spend it on unnecessary things. It's just learning where to spend your money. Put your money where your mouth is. You reap what you sow. It's the same situation. You can't expect things to change if we don't know where to plant and reap. When you go spend, you're planting. You're putting your money somewhere and expecting something in return. Make sure that what you're spending is something you're willing to give a return to. And yes, your job and everything requires certain things that you have to apply to, to civilization or to society. You get a job, you have certain dues to society and to what is the government or whatever job title you have. But if you choose not to invest, or I'm saying not invest, but if you that's that's a that's a nasty word, at least, not invest. But if you don't choose to sow your money or put your money where your mouth is, put sow where it's necessary to sow, then at the end of the day, as an economy as a whole, everything will just, when it does, or when I say when it does, but if something does happen in your own life or in the economy, then it'll be a fault. But not in an alarming way, because now it just sounds like I'm saying something bad's gonna happen. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when something is reaped from what you sow, then what you get back in return. You have no one to blame but the person who spent the money, and that is you. It can only make decisions to fix the numbers. Artificial intelligence can only calculate numbers and see the future of those numbers, even though it may be a mass quantity of infinite numbers that is completely incalculable by any human terms. The decisions made and what happens is not just numbers alone. Yes, the numbers add up to what the calculations and everything add up to, and then the numbers don't lie, and that's the truth. So if it's telling you the numbers don't lie, and it's telling you something and you don't listen, then it's also your fault. Because at the end of the day, even though we place AI in a lot of things in life, or had placed AI in a lot of things in life, it told us where we messed up. It's meant to fix our problems and us to listen to the fact of where we messed up. At the end of the day, the ones responsible for that truth is ourselves. So in the end of the day, if we don't put our money where we're supposed to and we neglect to listen to it, then it ends up being our fault. And so I'm just saying we need to be responsible for that. I should say, as humanity and as a whole, and as living beings, we always need to be responsible for that. We can't keep blaming an entity that created the universe. For some people don't want to believe in no powerful entity, and there's many religions, atheism, all that stuff. That's not where I'm going. out with all that. Where I'm going is the fact is, the truth is simple. If you want to learn and grow, there is a library where you can learn and grow. Some people read the Bible, who those believe in the Word. Some people, read a book of ethics or, necessary rules and laws. There's nothing more fundamental than the Ten Amendments or even the Ten Commandments. Whether you're religious or not, the Ten Amendments are, fundamental to the way we live our lives. But if you keep focusing on that, you'll go, if you keep focusing on that, or I should say, if you don't focus on if you the fear of it all, I should say, because then it goes nowhere. Nothing goes nowhere. Then it's just fear and it's anxiety and it all just crashes. Then it's fear and anxiety and then everybody freaks out and they're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And nobody wants to listen to fear. That tends to be people's number one enemy is fear. So if you really want things to change in life, you listen to what the fear is, but do not become possessed by it. If you become possessed by the fear, then you don't listen to what you need to learn and grow in that fear. It's like Teddy Roosevelt. My mom was back here a second. I had to pause the video. So yeah, I mean the fear, everything, being responsible from that point of view, and learning to learn from the mistakes that are left by those before us, and learning from their mistakes so we can fix the future. I mean, yes, some things are scary, and any person or any nation or country or world would be afraid of economic depressions and all that stuff. That's like speaking of taboo, fear, anxiety, especially you think about your family and everything, and you think about that point there's like wars and people fighting each other over food and and stuff like that, which is always ready to be ready for something like that and prepare at least food wise or for necessary things. It's always good to store at least a year or two of food and somewhere where the food's not gonna rot and everything like that, just in case things like that do happen. But putting the fear aside, the whole point of why we exist is to learn. So if we refuse the lesson and the message we receive through everything we hear and do in life, because I mean, the big decisions may cause dramatic changes, but it's the small ones that add up that'll change your very being. And if we don't learn from those mistakes, especially the ones from us before us, who warned us not to do it in the first place, why? Because they went through the pain, the experience to be able to learn from that for us, then we will regrettably fall back. And just like there's economic depressions, and we ourselves will fall into a depression if we refuse to learn from those who were before us, who spoke the truth, who stood up for that truth, especially when it comes to human rights, especially when it comes to laws, especially stuff like the Constitution, the Ten Amendments, and the Law of Moses. There's the Ten Commandments. Those were just laws made to maintain a country and nation, and along with everything that comes with that. The Law of Moses was a law set so that people would work together as a whole. God said, my house is one amongst itself, not divided. The Constitution says we, the people of the United States, something that has to be preserved, the Constitution. If we desecrate the laws that made that nation, that made our nation, why? Because the United States is a nation of immigrants. In the beginning, the United States was America, and Spain had discovered that country, at least, in that area, and then told the rest of Europe to come over and found, and, with the Mayflower, to found that country. And from that, the people who came learned their lesson about what it means, oppression means. If we don't choose to learn from the oppression that we experienced in the past, then that oppression that we choose not to learn from will come to haunt us in the future, and then we'll do it to ourselves. And there's nothing worse than losing the very foundations of the country that had been said before. I may be Hispanic, but I know what it means to lose one's self in the process. If you refuse the laws, especially like the laws of nature and the laws of Moses, which are the laws of of one's soul and mind, then there are laws that exist that govern that govern both the mind, the soul, and innocence. The whole reason there's laws is to protect innocence, to protect the conscience, the human conscience. We're human because we were made in God's image, and when it comes to the conscience and innocence is what we protect. And yes, crime happens, but if we don't protect what made those laws, if we don't protect the conscience and innocence of America and the laws that were set for that, along with the Constitution, along with the law of Moses that came from Israel, we don't protect the foundations of that, and we don't learn from that, then what's the point of having the laws in the first place? No laws, there's just chaos. Chaos, there's just anarchy, and everything falls apart. And even though that's kind of adding too much to what I'm trying to say, the point is that along with learning comes at least obedience and everything, and trust. And if there's no trust amongst the people and amongst the nation, everything falls apart. It's trust that we have that God's laws and the nation's laws, and especially the Constitution, that are fair and just, that we stand by them because they're true in the end. They're past the test of time. The laws themselves, like the law of Moses and the Constitution, the Ten Amendments, the Ten Commandments, all that has stood the test of time. And those who stand for that, judges at courts, the executive power, the president, Congress, even people in Congress, in the Library of Congress. In other words, it's called the Library of Congress, not the Library of the Judicial, not the Library of Executive, but the Library of Congress. Congress is a group of people working together to make decisions. If none of that stays true, it all falls apart. And you don't have to be someone born in the U.S. to realize that it's a nation of immigrants. Whether you're from the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany, France, South America, Africa, Asia, the people who made the country originally, which came from the United Kingdom, which once it said America, and from Mexico below was Latin America, was the Spanish, knew what they were doing. While Spain took a different direction when it came to it, they preserved a lot of, always America preserved something that even came, dare I say, from Abraham himself. Abraham, which was offered the promised land by God, by Elohim, made the country by giving that eventually to Moses and the lineage of Abraham. So it's because of that promise that came from Abraham that the promised land was passed on from generation to generation to this day. So everything having to do with United States, everything having to do with, even from the Black Plague to the Spanish Inquisition to the United States being discovered to even to today, everything has to do with the promise that was given to Abraham for a promised land. Why else would we carry the Bible, the book of life, into today? And now we carry science to try to prove things the way they are, but the only thing out of science that works is a scientific method. Science isn't just science or the practice of science. Science is a scientific method. Science is the scientific method to prove that something is true and real. And we pulled away from the scientific method and gone into science. And we pulled away from biblical truths or from the truth of the history of what has happened and gone to a history that we choose to, you know, it better suits our need. And sometimes, we don't want to learn from our parents, so we make history what we want to. And the only thing that's gonna happen is if we forget the past, we won't learn from that and fix the future. So the answer lies in the fact that we listen to what has happened in the past. Not everybody likes to read the Bible, and some people don't. But even then, if you look at history, you can see how history has repeated itself. And the only one that has had the power to do so are people who were empowered by God Himself, who were reading the Bible. Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, even Kennedy. A lot of the people, even Trump, he offered Bibles to people. At the end of the day, why is it that the people that always make radical changes to civilization and to nations are always the ones reading the book of life, the Bible, the Word, at the same time? Yet we refuse it for science, yet don't even practice the scientific method to prove that something is real. We like to enforce what is real without proving the method. So how can we say we're using science? That's not science. That's not religion. It's not the book of life. It's not Bible. That's just us trying to force our will upon nature and our human nature. And hence, why we have natural rights and why we have human rights. Then that makes us no longer human at that point. And then there's no judgment. But at that point, in what are we pulling into? But it's good to remind ourselves that we're still human. Part of being human is making mistakes. And the reason we made mistakes, just like Adam and Eve. And I hear this question all the time. If God is so good, why is there so much evil in the world? Boy, if there wasn't evil and if there wasn't mistakes, then we won't learn. God made us to make mistakes. He made us so we could make mistakes, so we could learn. And as we learn, we grow, and as we grow, we come together, and we come to learn to love one another and forgive and change and bring about new creations into life that help and fix the problems. It's the life behind that, and in so doing, everything becomes perfect. We realize that being human is making mistakes, and because we learn, we grow, and that's why it's fun. Everybody loves a little bit of drama in life. What would be life without drama? But there's a difference between drama and just plain torture. Every day living the same experience, thinking something's gonna happen, and nothing happens. To me, that's hell. But learning that we make mistakes and that we learn from them, life starts over again, and God forgives. Nature forgives. The universe forgives. The laws that exist are even our physical realm change and learn to become forgiving. Not, it's like stone throwing at somebody who, committed a crime. Thank God that doesn't happen anymore, but is that really the case? But that's besides the point. So my message to everyone is, if you want to change the future, you must first learn who you are and learn from the past. Learn who you are in the past, from history, from those who made the mistakes before you.